This happened to me about a month ago. Some context. I'm a woman in my mid-20s who lives alone in a cozy flat in the attic area of an old Victorian building up in the old servants' quarters where I belong. The design of the roof hanging over my window and the high driveway walls means that I get some interesting acoustics. During the quiet nighttime, the sounds bounce up from the whole long street, even from out of sight, and I can hear the footsteps and conversations of passerbys as crystal clear as if they were in the room with me. Yet, standing down on the drive, you can't hear them at all. It was almost 4 a.m. and pitch dark outside. I had been finding it hard to sleep properly the last few nights, so I was still up and pottering around to my PJs with the lights on. I had the window cracked and the blinds half open to get some fresh air in. I usually keep them closed if I have a light on at night. You can see right up into them from the street and houses across, which I sadly did not realize for my first couple of months here. Sorry, neighbors, if you saw me dancing and cooking my underwear. However, I was so flustered from not getting to sleep and desperate for air, I thought everybody else would be snoozing. I had done the same for the previous 3 or 4 sleepless nights. I had just made some tea and settled down to read a book when I heard my door buzzer ringing. I remember thinking it was odd that I had not heard anybody approaching yet, as I was just sitting by my window, but I brushed it off as being sleep deprived. Nobody who visits me ever rings my door buzzer. They call my phone, so I grabbed my phone to check if I had a missed call or something from friends or family, and nope, nothing. I ran to the window to look down at my porch, but unfortunately I could only see the steps leading up to it. The motion sensor light was on, and I could hear a strange scuffling noise. Then some thuds. I figured somebody had called the wrong flat by mistake and was probably drunkenly stumbling around. Even with my rational explanation, a strange sense of unease overwhelmed me. I felt on edge after I heard the thuds and turned my lights off so I could gawk through the blinds without being seen, but unfortunately couldn't see much. After a few minutes, the noises stopped and the motion sensor light turned off, although I didn't see anybody come back down the steps. I figured I'd either missed them in the dark or the person they were looking for had let them in. About 20 minutes or so, I relaxed and turned my lamp back on to potter around again. About a minute later, my buzzer rang again. This time it was ringing repeatedly as if somebody were aggressively holding the button down. I froze and stared at it for a while, unsure what to do. It was starting to get a bit annoying, and I began to worry that it might actually be somebody I know who needs help. Why else would they be ringing my doorbell past 4 a.m. in the morning like this? I plucked up the courage to answer, albeit with a shaky hand. Hello? No reply. I can hear somebody breathing heavily through the phone static. It sounded like a man. Who is this and what do you want? Again, no reply. Just heavy breathing. I hung up thinking they'd got the wrong flat or the telecom was playing up again. I stayed by the wall phone for a few moments staring at it, unsure what to do. The buzzer went off loudly again and I about jumped out of my skin as I was so tense. Who is this? Why do you keep calling me? All I can hear is static again. Thinking I was getting ding-dong ditched, I went to hang up the phone again. Just before I did, I could hear a muffled voice and I whipped the phone back to my ear and demanded to know who it was. What was that? Let me in. Huh? Who are you? Let me in, please. His voice starts breaking into a panic. I'm not letting you in here. You haven't said who you are. Well, there are people coming to get me. They tried to jump me and I ran away. I'm not safe out here. Please, you gotta let me in. Let me in. Help me, please. Immediately, I noped the heck out and hung up the phone. There was no way I was letting a strange man into my building who wouldn't identify himself, especially as I had to leave the safety of my locked flat to physically go down to the front porch to open it. My gut told me that his story was complete BS, but on the off chance it was true, I was worried there was about to be a crazy fight in my driveway. I grabbed my mobile phone and dialed 999 as I ran to turn my lights off and shut the blinds again, peeking out through a crack. The man had been ringing my buzzer nonstop since I hung up, but shortly after I turned the lights out, it stopped again. The weird shuffling and thumping noises on the porch started up again as I explained the situation to the emergency operator on the phone. She urged me to stay calm and stay on the phone with her and said that the police were already aware something was happening. Somebody else in my building had also called earlier to say that a man had been trying to break into the front door after trying all the ground floors, windows down the side and back. It had a similar call a few nights before too. That explains the weird noises I kept hearing and why I didn't hear them approach from the street at the front. The noises had stopped now, but I was beginning to panic really hard. I asked the lady when the police would arrive. She said that they would send out a unit as soon as one of them was available. Yay, recent cuts to police fundings, and to stay locked inside. After 10 minutes of no activity outside and the motion light turning off, the lady said to stay in my flat with the door locked. Sure, like I was going to do anything else, and to call back if he reappeared. And they'd escalate it on their end if he made it into the building, and she ended the call. I sat by the window watching, and sure enough, a few minutes later the noises started again and the light below came on. I don't think he ever left, or he went down the side to the car park at the back. I still couldn't see what was going on because of the angle from my window. I was about to call the police again when a taxi driver passing by slammed on his brakes and shouted out his window. I stopped to listen. Taxi driver: "Hey you, what are you doing over there? I dropped you off from the other side of town about an hour ago." The taxi driver knew this man. What a twist. "Oh hey, I lost my keys. My friends live here, and I'm trying to get a hold of them to let me in." I see the shoulder and the leg of the man come around the corner slightly. "You told me you were going home to sleep it off and wouldn't be causing any more trouble like earlier. I asked you to get out and you begged me to drop you off. I'm home still, so I did, and now you're not at home." "I just said I had no keys to get in. I'm trying to stay with my friends. They live here." You could hear that the man was getting agitated and an edge was creeping into his tone as he lied again. "So why are you skulking down the side there making a ruckus instead of ringing the bell? What's going on? What are you really doing?" The man gets angry at this and storms down the driveway to confront the taxi driver. This is my first time getting a proper look at him. Although I could only see the back of him, he looked like a normal, well-presented young guy with brown hair, a black t-shirt, jeans, and trainers. I was surprised based on his appearance that he would not be somebody I would normally think to avoid late at night. I couldn't really make out what was said next as they were both shouting over each other, but I could hear the taxi driver yell police, and the man suddenly leapt towards his car door. The taxi driver quickly screeched off down the road, leaving the man standing there swearing and seething. It was at this point that I realized I had been an idiot, frozen by the window watching this scene beneath me without calling the police to let them know he was back. I ducked down to pick up my phone, which I must have dropped amidst the commotion. As I spoke to a different operator, the man turned around and strolled down the driveway a little bit, but seemed to hesitate and stopped, staring up at the building. I tried to get a good look at his face, but it was too dark to make out much detail. He stood like this for probably 10 minutes, just standing there and staring up at my window, occasionally swaying from side to side. I knew rationally that he couldn't see me peeking out, but I could swear he was staring right at me and knew I was there. He stopped looking at my window and turned to stare at the door for a few moments. I was begging the emergency operator to get the police out here sooner, as I was worried he was going to try the door again. However, I think the confrontation with the taxi driver made him lose his nerve, and he was worried about police showing up. I could hear him make an odd huffing and snorting noise of frustration as he turned and left my driveway, slowly walking down the street and out of sight. I updated the emergency operator with the direction he headed off in and ended the call. About 10 to 15 minutes later, I saw a police car cruise by with its headlights off, heading the way he'd gone. Unsurprisingly to me, they never found him, as it had been too long and there were too many side streets and alleys around for him to slip way down. He didn't come back again, but I stayed vigilant by that window until sunrise, crying my little eyes out and chain smoking like hell. I didn't sleep properly for weeks afterwards, and I got extremely paranoid walking to and from my building now. I've stopped taking the bins down if the sun is even slightly setting. Luckily, I had already begun the process to move somewhere else for unrelated reasons, so I only have to live here for a couple of more weeks before I move to a big house with friends. I liked living on my own before this, and now I'm very grateful to be losing my privacy to have some backup. A shout out to the brave taxi driver who stops to confront him. You were more helpful than the local police even, and I don't know if he would have left if you would have not scared him off. I wish I could ask you what the heck happened when you met that man earlier in the night. First, I suppose I should supply some context. I'm a workout addict. I love to lift weights and run. I run about 12 miles a week typically, 3 miles 4 separate days. Every day that I run, I take the same trails that surround the lake in my hometown. These trails are relatively secluded. However, they usually have fellow runners and wanderers scattered throughout most times of the day and early evening. I always run through a particular trail that is my personal favorite. It is very close to my home, not even a half mile away. This past week, my local gym was closed due to renovation, so I filled my week with about twice the amount of running, as I could not lift. Because of my sudden increase in running, my tendinitis flared up. I always get overzealous and do that myself. This will come back into play in a bit. Now, I'm hoping I am able to describe this little picnic area and make sense. At a certain point, the trail guides you to an adorable picnic area. There are parking spaces and picnic tables equipped with grills scattered throughout the lakeside area. Families are grilling here constantly. It's lovely. Behind a certain table, off in one of the more secluded areas, there is a great little dirt trail leading to a lovely cliff overlooking the lake. I've hung out here alone since childhood, as we always had, and in a rather safe area. I promise this will be important later. Still with me? I hope that was all clear. I'm so spooked right now. I was finishing up what would be my last run before my tendinitis flare up. thus forcing me to rest. It was dusk, and I was just about to cross through the adorable park and onward through the trail towards home. When I hit the park, I stopped, thinking I might head towards my beloved hidden trail to take a brief rest on my favorite cliff. I am not one to be paranoid, and I am quite adventurous, but after hours on Let's Not Meet, I decided, maybe not, and picked up my speed. I noticed a van parked, but there usually were people here. Didn't think much of it. Maybe a fisherman, and I moved along. So thankful for that. The next day, I had such brutal pain from overdoing my workouts that I could hardly walk, let alone run. I know, way too overzealous. I took some time off. This morning I wake up to a news update from my news app, stating that police are investigating a dismembered, burnt female's body found at the lake a few hours before I had woken up. I opened the article only to find worse news, where the body was found, burned and gruesomely chopped up, was just on my favorite trail, right between the picnic table and my beloved cliff, less than 1 mile away from my house, the area I run through 4 times a week, the same area where I almost explored just a night or so ago, as I'd done since I was in elementary school, the same area that my Reddit paranoia had warned me from that evening, with that same sketchy gray van I thought nothing of. They are still investigating and nobody has been caught yet. I'm less than a mile away here, sitting in my dark house, praying that whoever did this gets caught, and that they get caught fast. All I can say is how thankful I am to be safe, and I'm also so grateful for not being the poor soul to discover the body, because that could have happened to me quite easily. That is how much time I spent up there, and that is how close it is to me. I still do not have any clue if the van was involved, but it seems odd, especially since I have a couple of friends, female, who used to run the same area, but stopped after weeks of seeing a gray van conveniently driving by each time they ran. I don't think I need to explain why we shouldn't meet, whoever you are, but congrats on making me terrified of my own backyard. I'm scared to look out of a window for too long even. If I need to post the article in the comments or get it verified, I will. Just seeing if this gets any listeners or readers, and thanks for reading. I'll keep you updated if the killer is caught. So I was reading a post and it triggered a memory that I had completely forgotten about and decided to share on here. Quick backstory. I used to live in a very small town that was predominantly safe for kids, only had some drug issues. Anyways, my house was located in a small and upscale part of the town, which mainly housed families. There was a small pond with lots of green in the neighborhood that was about a 5-minute walk from my house. To get to the pond, you have to go down a grassy hill. Neighborhood kids, including myself, would always go down to the pond for hours to catch frogs, skip rocks, etc. Okay, so now to the story. On this particular day, it was raining and pretty cold, so there were no other kids at the pond. My best friend, her brother, who was 1 year older than us, and I decided to head down to the pond for a bit. After about half an hour, we see at the top of the hill a minivan pull up. We thought nothing of it, as there was a neighborhood mailbox at the top of this hill as well, and a lot of people stopped to get their mail. A man started to get out of the minivan, and I remember him being older, probably in his 60s. Another note, since we lived in a small town, everybody knew everyone, or at least could recognize everyone. I remember thinking it was strange that I'd never seen this man before in town or in the neighborhood. He got out and just stared at the 3 of us for what seemed to be forever. All of a sudden, he yelled at us and said, "It's not safe down there. You kids better come up here." My best friend and her brother looked terrified, and I had this gut feeling that something wasn't right. We didn't say anything back, and he continued to repeat that phrase. "It's not safe down there. You kids better come up here." And he kept saying it over and over. Our fight or flight reaction kicked in, and we all booked it up the other side of the hill, which was only about a few meters away from him in the minivan. As soon as he saw us running, he got into his van and started slowly driving behind us, literally following us until we reached my house. Luckily, my garage door was open and my parents' 2 cars were parked inside. We hid behind one of my parents' cars and watched as he pulled to the side of my house and parked. My parents were inside, but obviously had no idea what was happening at this point. He stayed parked in front of my house for a couple of minutes, until my dad came outside to take the trash out and saw the 3 of us hiding. I guess the man saw my dad and drove away, but as soon as he left, we told my parents everything. Even until this day, 12 years later, my parents still think we were being overdramatic and that it was a man that was genuinely concerned for our safety because of the weather. Nonetheless, we weren't allowed to go back to the pond anymore. I don't blame them for thinking this though, because the 3 of us tended to work things up a bit and be dramatic. But I knew from the way I had that strange feeling when I first saw him at the top of the hill that something was wrong, and to this day, I still believe that he was planning something sinister. This story goes back to a few years ago when I was a 17-year-old high school student. Every day, I'd walk the 25 or 30-minute journey to and from school. There was a shortcut I could take home that took some time off of the walk, and as a nature lover, the shortcut was very enjoyable. Whenever I'd walk home alone, I would take this shortcut to enjoy the small amount of forest that we have in the medium-sized, moderately busy city. My shortcut was pretty well traveled, and I would occasionally see other people walking from their neighborhood towards my busy street, or the other streets close by, or other students walking home from my high school or the college. Sometimes there would be nobody out there but me on the path. To give you an idea, the path definitely was not groomed, but it was traveled enough that you could make out a path from being trampled over the years. The shortcut started off from the busy road by my high school and went to a low-lying open wooded area with some small ponds. After a few minutes of this, I could veer right up the big hill towards the street parallel to my street. One day I was walking home from school after staying a bit late for extra help. A few minutes into my shortcut, I noticed a guy standing off the main path a bit, seemingly minding his own business and talking on a cell phone. There was an open backpack sitting on the ground by his feet. Growing up with overprotective parents and in martial arts, I've always been a very cautious person and taken a lot of details, especially being a young girl out walking alone. This wasn't unusual by any means, since the entire low-lying area is traveled and there are numerous paths off the main path leading in different directions since it isn't a thick forest, sort of like a free-for-all for walking. Sometimes people would stand off the busy road while waiting for the bus at the stop close by, not wanting to stand in all the traffic fumes while people sped by during rush hour. The only thing I took caution of was that I had been seeing him there a few times that week and had never seen him before. But oh well, maybe he was a college student or just moved to the area. This time walking on the shortcut felt different though, possibly because there was no one else on the path today. But I started to get this bad feeling in my stomach, the one everyone has a hard time describing but most people know too well. Something was not right. I was already well along my shortcut though, and I decided to blame my feelings on me being paranoid, which is not uncommon for me. I kept an eye on him, on my peripheral vision walking by, and he continued to talk on his cell phone and he didn't seem suspicious. So I continued my merry way. I must have walked 20 or 25 meters away when the guy stopped talking on the phone, and I felt an even bigger feeling of dread up in my gut. I turned around to see him crouched over, phone gone, fiddling around with some sort of cloth and a brown glass bottle. Before I had a second to register what the heck he was doing, his head shoots up in my direction and the look in his eyes is a terrifying mix between, I've been caught and I'm not stopping now. He drops everything, leaving his stuff behind, and starts sprinting straight to me, cloth in hand. At this point, I'm too far away from the busy road for anybody to see me in the low-lying woodland with this crazy fuck, and I'm too far away to scream bloody murder. My first instinct in that split-second decision is to run towards my neighborhood. I decided this all as I turned around, throwing my heavy backpack on the ground and sprinting as fast as I could, starting up the hill towards my neighborhood. Judging by appearance, this guy looked like he could break me in two with no effort, and I trusted my flight response more than my fight response. Plus, I didn't know what the heck he had in his hand. All throughout school, I had been the top cross-country and track runner in the entire school, out of the female and male teams. My running had been my savior on a few other let's-not-meet-worthy occasions, but soon into the chase, I knew it wouldn't be enough this time. This guy was very fast, and I could tell he was slowly gaining on me without even looking back. I finally see some fenced-in backyards up ahead, and hoping people are home from work, I start trying to scream help, as much as I could with my out-of-breath, useless voice. I make a split-second decision to start jumping fences of people's yards, hoping this guy's hurling skills are shittier than his running. The first fence throws him off, but by the second into the next yard, he's on my ass and I can feel him come insanely close to grabbing my leg. I'm crapping my pants at this point. I see no cars in driveways, no sign of anybody home, and the only thing that is keeping me from panicking and wiping out in my exhausted state is thinking that I may not ever see my family or friends again. The next yard belongs to people I know rather well, including their dog. Necessary background interruption here. This house was close to my street on the street parallel to mine, and I have come to know their dog very well since they recently moved in. My friend hated the shortcut, and sometimes I would walk to school with her, on the street down the hill to the busy street. This dog was huge and an absolute maniac, and usually when kids were walking to school, they would put him in the backyard instead of the front yard, since he would growl and scare the heck out of the kids walking by while he was tied outside. I love animals, so every time we would walk by, I'd talk calmly to him through his menacing "I'll screw you up" barks. Every time he'd be slightly less vicious to me, until one day the nice people who lived there gave me a treat to give him, and after that, the dog was a nice stop on the way to school. The dog's name is Leo. With that next yard and my newly acquired friend in sight, I had never felt hope like I did in that moment. By some insane stroke of luck, they let him out in the backyard for the afternoon while they were at work. When Leo saw me frantically running towards him, he started wagging his tail. Then looked to the guy chasing close behind me, and he started growling. I thought this would be enough to get the guy to screw off, but no. He started to jump over the fence the second after I did, but the dog jumped up and his teeth came so close to his face that the creep fell backwards into the other yard straight on his ass as I fell into the dog's yard on my butt. The creep and I stared at each other out of breath for a few seconds, while the dog was barking and jumping like mad at the fence at him. Maybe he was assessing if he could take on Leo or not. I prayed the creep didn't have a knife or something. The guy looked angrier than I've ever seen a person, and after a few seconds, got up and started running back down the hill from where we came. I sat there for a few seconds in complete shock and couldn't move until my hero started licking my face. I snapped out of it and ran to the back door and started pounding. They obviously weren't home, or else they probably would have heard what just went down. My house was closed, so I jumped the fence and ran the rest of the way home and called the cops to investigate and tried to find the guy. I gave them the best description I could after coming practically face to face with him. The dude's bag was gone and so was every trace of it. They found my poor backpack in a muddy puddle and the police told me they'd keep looking. Never saw the guy again and I didn't hear anything more about it, and after calling the office a few times I gave up. They told me during that time they had received sketchy reports, people being stalked and chased, etc., but nothing like mine over the last few months. And there were a few missing persons cases. But in a city like the one I'm from, not the worst but not the best, you can never connect anything like that for sure. The more I thought about it over the years, the more screwed up it was and the more confused I was. First, if he was trying to kidnap me, why didn't he think of a better way to grab and snatch me into the forest before I had the chance to get away, or before another trail goer possibly walked by? He didn't appear to have a weapon on him or anything except that creepy cloth. And what the heck did he have in his hand? A friend thought it may have been chloroform, but I did research on it, and apparently it's more of the myth that pouring it on a rag and covering a person's face causes them to faint very quickly. Plus, where the heck would you get it anyway? So thanks to that jerk, I never walk the shortcut anymore, without at least 2 friends, and pepper spray or some sort of protection. So, sex trade kidnapper, amateur stalker, serial killer, or whatever the heck you are, please let's not meet ever again. And Leo got lots of extra love whenever I saw him. I, 25 female, have been living in Japan for a few years now, and one thing I have quite often are stalker encounters. It seems that in my area, or anywhere that isn't a big city, now that I think about it, Japanese men can come to be quite obsessed with foreign women, especially fair-skinned, blonde-haired, blue-eyed foreign women, such as myself. I've dealt with quite a few situations where I was sure I would be kidnapped. One such encounter was back in 2013 when I was in my 3rd year of university. The following was a very brief encounter, but a terrifying one nonetheless. I was studying abroad at a school in Saitama, making a lot of friends and having the time of my life. I joined the a cappella club and had a group that I sang with. Together, there were 5 of us. They were all men, which made me uncomfortable at first, but we blended well together and they felt more comfortable singing English songs with me, there to help with pronunciation and whatnot. One day after practice was finished, my group invited me to go shopping with them at a local supermarket to get things for a nabe party. For those of you who don't know, nabe, pronounced nabe, is basically a hot pot. You get a bunch of veggies and some meat, and then you put a big pot on a little portable gas burner and everybody gathers around and eats together. It's a huge part of Japanese culture and a great way to hang out with friends. I was ecstatic that they invited me. I was usually left out of these kinds of things at first because I was an outsider, whereas they had known each other since their freshman year. Over the few months that we had been singing together though, they'd grown to be like a family to me, each one like an overprotective big brother, especially a guy named Kosuke. He was tall and a bit on the heavy side, but he was extremely charismatic. Whenever he saw me fumbling around, nervous or confused, he'd quickly appear by my side and throw a heavy arm around my shoulder, practically knocking me over while asking, "What's the problem?" Anyway, the nabe party. We all went to our friend's house for the party and ended up drinking and talking until pretty late. When my phone in my pocket vibrated to tell me I had a low battery, I finally saw the time and realized it was already 4 a.m. The guys were getting ready to nap until the train started back up, but I was only a 30-minute walk away from my share house. I announced that I was leaving and started packing my stuff up. Kosuke offered to walk me home, but I told him I was fine. The sun would be rising soon. Japan has an early sunrise and it wasn't really that far. The cold would kill me before the walk did, I joked. They reluctantly agreed and saw me off, demanding I call them if anything happened. I made it to the station safely, marking the halfway point home. I descended the stairs to see a single car parked outside with a man leaning up against it. staring straight at me. It wasn't anybody I knew. He was older than me and in his mid-30s, maybe early 40s. His head turned, watching me as I walked down the stairs. Feeling uncomfortable with the unwanted attention, I rushed my pace a little bit, rubbing my hands together to fight the sudden chill that overcame me, though I was pretty sure it had nothing to do with the cold. I crossed to the other side of the street, avoiding him as best as I could. I avoided looking at him as well, but I heard the car door slam and the engine start up. Headlights illuminated me, and he turned to drive alongside where I was walking. His window rolled down. "Hey," he said in Japanese. "Are you alone?" I said nothing. "Where are you going? Do you speak Japanese?" I quickened my pace. "You're pretty. Let's hang out." I began power walking. The sluggish tiredness from the party was quickly being replaced with adrenaline. He pulled ahead and I thought he gave up, but his car stopped not far ahead of me, and he put it in park, getting out. "Let's go home together." He was standing about 10 ahead of me. I stopped so I wasn't walking closer to him. "Let's go home together," he repeated a little bit more forcefully, stepping towards me. "Get in my car." I didn't have much time to think. I immediately turned left and sprinted into the park. There were only 4 entrances, all of which a car could not enter. It was a traditional Japanese-style garden with tall bamboo trees and a pond of koi surrounding a gazebo in the middle. The man was in a no-parking zone, so he wouldn't leave his car alone. I heard him curse under his breath and jump back into the car. I pulled out my phone, immediately calling Kosuke. Just my luck, though. He didn't answer. I tried the rest of the group. No one answered. I looked to the next exit just in time to see his car crawl by slowly, his head sticking out the window, searching for me as I hid behind a grove of bamboo. Trembling in fear, I tried again and again with no success to reach the guys. I looked repeatedly at my 4 exits, always seeing him crawl by. He was circling the park, waiting for me to walk out so he could talk to me again. Though I had a bad feeling talking wasn't really what he wanted to do. Just as I was about to cry, my phone lit up dimly with a phone call from Kosuke. "What's the problem?" he said jokingly. The other guys in the background were still joking around. In the rush of breath, I explained to him my current predicament. Though he didn't say a word the entire time, I could practically hear the smile leave his face. The rest of the group had quieted too, and I heard one say, "What's going on? Is she okay?" He told me to stay where I was and that he was on the way, but I was already 20 minutes away and I wasn't sure that I had 20 minutes before the guy parked his car and came into the park to look for me. I looked behind me again just in time to see him drive by that exit, slowly looking through. That's it. I'm cold, I'm tired, and I'm scared. I want to go home. "I'm going to run after he passes the next exit and turns the corner," I explained. "No," he said, "wait for me. I can run and be there soon." But Kosuke wasn't a runner. I didn't think he could get there any faster than I could. He started to say something more, but my phone suddenly went dark. Dead battery. No turning back now. I waited a few seconds and there he was, right on schedule. He crawled by the exit and stopped. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it, but he looked hard and slowly around. The sun was starting to come up now and he had a better view. It was really now or never. He slowly moved forward. I crept out of my hiding spot and moved towards the exit. I poked my head out and saw him turn the corner. I sprinted towards my house and didn't look back. I was too scared to. I don't know if he saw me and I was too fast to follow or what, but I didn't ever see the guy again. I immediately put my phone on the charger and called the guys back to let them know I was okay, but Kosuke never let me walk home alone in the dark again.